Alpine ClubCasts, and the first in our new Easter series. Today, we're off to the southern tip of South America, to Tierra del Fuego, to talk about climbing, sailing, and horses at the ends of the earth, with Julian Freeman-Attwood, Andy Parkin, and Simon Yates. I really hope you enjoy it. The Alpine Club is in normal times an extremely active club, and we're always looking for potential new members. We welcome both accomplished alpinists and those gathering their experience who may be suited to aspirant membership. If you'd like more information on joining, then please get in touch with me. I run the Meets programme, and have a look at our website. If you're watching an Alpine ClubCast for the first time today, then a special welcome to you. Welcome also to members of the Climbers Club and University of Nottingham Mountaineering Club. Great to have you with us. If you're watching live on YouTube or Zoom, please add any questions for tonight's speakers to the chat as we go along, and we'll try to get those answered at the end. And as usual, anyone in Zoom, you will be unmuted at the end for any applause, and do stick around for a chat. The little known Tierra del Fuego in South America is the home to bleak and weather-worn peaks, fjords, and glaciers. And this has received relatively few expeditions over the years. I can think of no one better to kick off the evening than Julian Freeman-Attwood, with a brief history of its exploration, including a trip there which he made with Doug Scott in 1994. Julian has participated in or led some 35 expeditions to the Antarctic and sub-Antarctic by boat, many trips to the far west Nepal Himalaya, to the Karakoram, Mongolia, and 7 trips to the Tibet Plateau. And with the exception of Shishapangma in 1987, all these trips were to previously unclimbed 6,000-meter peaks. One of our truly undersung expeditioners, Julian, is joining us from his home in Snowdonia. Over to you, Julian.
Yeah. Hello and good evening. I'm going to give you, to start with, a brief overview of the history of Tierra del Fuego, and just start with a map for those unaccustomed entirely to the area. The mainland South America and Tierra del Fuego are separated by the Straits of Magellan, marked here, and then down south, it's the Beagle Channel that separates Tierra del Fuego from the islands to the south of it that end up down at Cape Horn and Cape Horn Island. I'm going to then, after doing a small historical overview, to show you a trip I did with Skip Novak and Doug Scott and Frank McDermott to a peak in the Sierra Navarro. The few people I'm going to mention, of course, Ferdinand Magellan himself, who made it from the Atlantic through to the Pacific in the early 16th century. I believe it was him who called the area Tierra del Fuego, Land of Fire, after the Yagan, Alacalaf, and Ona Indians of the area, who were plainly very hardy folk who used to dive for centoia crab from canoes in which they had an open fire in order to get warm again after diving in such frigid water. Then there was Pedro Sarmiento in 1580, and then, of course, Darwin himself with Captain Fitzroy, Fitzroy being an extraordinary surveyor and map maker. It was Darwin who spoke of Mount Sarmiento as being the most sublime spectacle in Tierra del Fuego, and he wasn't far wrong. That's a picture of the east face of Sarmiento. Following on from that, well, I mean, I'm pre-seeing this, but Martin Conway, first Baron Conway, made a trip to Sarmiento in 1898. And then, of course, the priest Alberto de Agostini in 1913, who then returned in 1956 at the age of 76, but with a team including Carlo Mari and Clemente Maffei, who made the first ascent of Sarmiento. And that brings us through then to Eric Shipton in 58, 62, and 63, who climbed Mounts Darwin, Beauvais, Francais, and Yagan. But more of that later from Simon Yates. And then Mount Buckland climbed by Carlo Murray again in 1966, Jack Miller, a great name, in 1966, and the peak I'm going to show you was actually climbed in that year, so we didn't make a first ascent of what I'm going to show you, but we went in 1994, and then Simon and Andy, etc., in the early 2000s. You need a boat to get to, obviously, around Tierra del Fuego, or to get into the mountains. And my link with sailing mountaineering was by the fact that I had a share a very long time ago in Tillman's last boat, the pilot cutter Baroque. And I bought a share in that from the friend who bought it off Tillman. And actually, we were in the very bad storms of the 1979 Fastnet race, in which I think 18 boats were sunk, but that's a different story. The first actual trip I did down south wasn't by a sailing boat, was actually on the HMS Endurance that took me to South Georgia in 1989. And that was a trip I got together with Stephen Venables, and there's Lindsay Griffin, Brian Davidson, and Kesa Toft, who was the filmmaker on that trip. But I mention that because after that, I then met Skip at a lecture. I think it was at Alpine Club, and he's an extraordinary, incredibly well-known round-the-world yachtsman who then built two boats eventually, one the Pelagic, which is the boat we went on in 1994, but more latterly the Pelagic Australis seen here. And amazingly rigidly built expedition boats. And it's been my pleasure to have been on 8 different sailing mountaineering trips with Skip to South Georgia and the Antarctic Peninsula, and of course also to Tierra del Fuego. Just going back to a map, this is again very generalized map, but it shows up in the west here. I'm sorry, I've gone on the Mount Sarmiento, the Cordillera Navarro, which I'll speak of, the Mount Darwin area in the central east of the range, about 150 miles long, the range. Unbelievably windy, high precipitation, but incredibly beautiful. And I've marked Cerro Ada, which is an unclimbed peak that Simon will tell us about, and which he climbed. And this is a map now of Camillo Rada's, who and just showing off the Agostini fjord, where we landed, where Skip and Doug and me landed in '94 to climb Pico Escondido here. And yeah, there's Doug. I think it was his first sort of sailing mountaineering trip. This shot shows Mount Buckland, as I mentioned, climbed by Carlo Murray in '66. And we went into anchor in the fjord there. The great thing about Tierra del Fuego, you don't have to go out into big open sea. This is a shot from the open sea with Skip. That's going to South Georgia. But it's still extremely windy, and anchorages can be as bad as this. This one was actually in a different place to Tierra del Fuego, but we've had very, very bad winds in Tierra del Fuego. Still, we got into Agostini Fjord and we checked out the mountain, which we needed to get up. There's a buttress out of sight here, and this one, in order to get up onto the upper slopes here. This was all quite avalanchy, as we shall see either side. So that was the plan there. Now, to get up to the glaciers is very interesting in South Georgia, in Tierra del Fuego. Very interesting vegetation. The Northophagus beech or Antarctic beech, thorn, and incredibly beautiful. This is the most southerly trees in the world. And that low carrying through this is quite a struggle because it's all very boggy. But that got us up to a kind of bit of medial moraine between two glaciers, as Doug and Frank McDermott and Skip in the background. And we got a lot of gear here and stuff hanging up drying after a couple of days of bad weather. And we couldn't work out why one morning or a lot of nuts and friends were kind of scattered around on the grass. And that was the culprit, was the Fuegan fox. Which is actually a relative of the wolf, apparently. I looked it up. And actually, when we came down, this fox actually ran between Doug's legs at one stage. And then that got us onto the glaciers. Again, with that incredible shot of Mount Buckland behind. Now that got us to below one buttress, and of course the weather changed, as it always does in Tierra del Fuego. And the problem is the precipitation is so great that you have to get up every hour or less than that to clear snow and to get some air. And it taught me to bring a short piece of rubber hose, quite large hose, just 18 inches of it, so that you didn't have to get out. We didn't have such a hose with us at this stage where you could get air in, but let yourself be buried. Anyway, I got out of this after hours. I think we were here for a couple of days, and that's Doug in the background there. And I got up to have a word with him, and we were chatting. I had a look into his tent, and it looked like, I mean, Skip and me were in the Wild Country Quasar in the foreground. In the back was Doug was in a Ferrino tent which he had borrowed off Robert Shower, and it had a leaking fly sheet. It was like the Black Hole of Calcutta in there. It was about an inch deep in water. Anyway, I was just heading back to my tent, and Doug, in that way he does, he just said, hey kid, you don't fancy swapping tents, do you? I dived into mine laughing heartily. There's no way I was swapping tents with Doug. No way. He was, but I think he suffered in there a fair bit. But it cleared, and we were lucky, and the weather came good, and we got to the bottom of that first buttress, and that shows Mount Darwin area, which Simon will tell us more about in the back left hand here. That's all sort of Mount Darwin. So we're looking southeast there. That's Frank McDermott, and then Doug climbing. We had 2.5 pitches of some rather good basalt, mild VS rock climbing. So that was all good, and with some mixed fairly easy stuff in between. But you can see all the kind of avalanche debris on the left there, which is why we stuck to the buttress here. And then after the second buttress with a bit more rock climbing, Doug pointing up to the summit there, and that got us onto easy slopes. And Hamish Laird, who is Skip's friend, who built the boat with him, was on the boat down in the fjord at that time with the telephoto lens. You can just maybe see where the arrow is as the four of us making it up to the kind of the summit there. Frank McDermott on the left, Doug, and then Skip and myself. McDermott stayed there and took a rather good photograph of us on the summit. And the best bit of that, besides being quite a good summit shot, is a view, amazing view of Sarmiento. It's probably one of the best views you'll get of it. Very pleased with that. But I'm going to end up with just mentioning, obviously, Doug, who was our president from 1999 to 2001. As we know, he fought against bolting and the dumbing down of traditional mountaineering, and we must continue that fight. It's really very important. But I'll leave you with and of course his extraordinary work with the Sherpas and Porters of Nepal. We all know. But I'm going to leave you with, we were in Punta Arenas. We've all been in Sir Tito's bar drinking pisco sours and got rather the worse for wear. And then went off to a very ancient, probably late Victorian steam bath where you sit in a box with your head sticking out the top. And our Doug Scott with his round rimmed glasses like John Lennon, I thought you might rather like that photo of him sitting in the corner there as a nice thought, you know, of a nice thought of Doug. And so that's really that. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Julian. Fantastic to see those brilliant photos of the mountains, and also Doug as well. So thanks. And the map which Julian showed is available to buy on Camillo Rada's website, which is unchart.org. Next night, I'm going to play a short video we've made of Andy Parkin. Andy comes from Sheffield, but he's been resident in Chamonix since 1983. In Alpine ClubCast number 8, he talks about his ascent of Beyond Good and Evil in 1992. That's a seminal climb on the Aiguille de Pèlerin, which set new standards in alpine climbing. Andy's life has evolved from that of climber to one of artist climber. This allows him to explore the mountain ranges of the world, looking for first ascents, adventure, and images. Here you can see him talking to Victor Saunders about horses and the first ascent of Mount Ada in the year 2001 on his and Simon Yates' first trip to the Cordillera Darwin. At the time, the mountain was not even on the map.
What was the plan?
The plan was based on a vague idea to climb a new route on the east side of Mount Bovey that Shipton, of course, climbed in the 60s from the other side, from Cordillera, a place we were destined to sail to, actually. We need to get to Yendigan coming from the east side, find the valley first. So we got horses off Huzzy, the gaucho lives down there. We'd ride up and down the valley looking for access points into the range of mountains in the direction of Bovey. There were lots of like little drainage valleys and things like that. So we were kind of looking for glacial rivers that we could follow on horseback across rivers, swamps, steep forests like that, where you have to lean all the way back on the saddle. Although I would have preferred to get off, but you couldn't. By then it's too late. Galloping across massive plains sometimes. It was a great fun. It was a real buzz the whole trip, right? And we found the valley, so they dropped us off. The girls left us. Gaucho went back, and Janie Lynn, Celia, lived then the life of gauchos, cowgirls, with Huzzy. This has been about 10 days doing amazing stuff on horseback. They had a great trip too.
And what do they do with the boat meanwhile?
Well, that's just moored off in the bay, and me and Simon went up onto, having set up a base camp in the forest, found the snout of the glacier, got onto the glacier, and there, right at the end of it, is this like most amazing triangular summit, Mount Ada, south face of it, and we could see what we thought to be the east face of Mount Bovey. Okay, but it's not as good looking as this peak, which we thought was one of the Roncalli Mountains that appears on the map of Hillebrand. But we couldn't see anything clearly, so, you know, okay, we'll get on with this. And eventually we managed to carry a stock of food up on the glacier, wait for the weather to go. And we decided, basically, because the weather was like one day good, one day bad, we'll hit the bottom of the mountain first in the worst weather. Hopefully get the good weather to top out, which is what we did. And it was hard, it was technical, it was like ED, or, you know, like the Northeast Lidwat, but more sketchy, the protection. and then the top bit fans out into the northwesterly court with one of these ice rime summits.
How big a face would that have been?
About 900 meters.
Oh, so kind of what size?
Yeah.
Big face.
And we had to come all the way back down it. We did that all night.
Why couldn't you? Was there no way off the back?
Well, off the side, we were worried about the snow conditions because it snowed that day. I mean, if it avalanche onto a spindrift off like massively, that was a big problem. But at the same time, we were worried about a build-up, you know, in places. We weren't at ease on going on other slopes to get off this mountain, right? It was okay where we were because it was purging constantly, right? So we just had to come back down the same route. After the bivouac, we just said, okay, I proposed to Simon, let's do it in blocks. I'll lead the first 3, you do the next 3. Leave the bivy gear here, it means we've got to come back to it. And that was the best thing, because then we could just like race up it, you know, and it was really good. An amazing summit that I managed to get to the top, and it was like, the snow was so light, it was like walking in feathers. And then the clouds cleared around me, and I'm starting to see things, you know, all the Beagle Channel, Sarmiento, Mount Italia, Mount Francis, and the range of Roncalles going to the north, sticking out the clouds. Simon comes up, he's happy because he can roll a cigarette up there. It's so calm for once. And we're looking, and he's going, I said, don't worry, it's going to clear, it's going to clear. And then we had this Brocken Spectre cast on a range of mountains. We've got everything. And above all, the clouds clear to the north. So we counted the summits. Hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is this we're on? We hadn't a clue. No, that's Bovey. This is not even on the map. Anyway, we didn't hang around. We bailed, left a snow stake at the summit, and we bailed down all night, totally exhausted, to get back to this advanced base camp, and the weather was awful, and that was it. And then we went down, horses back down, all back to the coast, back on the boat, and went further west, exploring now, and making maps, right, looking at other ranges of mountains for the future, because already that trip, we just knew we'd be coming back.
One final thing, we mentioned that this would be boats, mountains, and horses. In this, do you get on well with horses in these?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah. Those the one trip in 2001 alone, the horses there. I mean, we rode them later on other trips, right? And I'm beholden to at least 4 different mounts. They all showed different characteristics, preferences for boggy ground, rivers, galloping on the flat, everything. Fantastic animals. And one, you know, with my blocked hip, I'm not easy on a horse, and I must bounce. I can't ride smoothly like Jose. To see him, it's like Mercury, smooth. No wonder the guy could ride forever on the horse as well, because he's economic with it, you know. Anyway, me, Simon, and Jose have gone to explore. Can we get across this river? Is it worth coming back with the horses loaded with all the baggage and all that stuff? You know. They get off, they dismount to go and look at the river, because it's a bit of an epic, me getting in and out of the saddle and everything. I just sit on the horse. The other horses are all eating this lush grass. My horse kind of looks around like that. He's going, are you going to get, you know, look, are you going to get off or what? I said, well, yeah, I'm just thinking, yeah, I may as well, it's fine, it looks like they're staying a bit long, you know. And my horse kind of preempts me, and it just went down on its side ever so slowly. I mean, I didn't even know it could do this, you know. And all I had to do was literally take a foot out of the stirrup and stand up on the ground, and I was there. And the horse kind of looks at me, it's like, was that okay? Gets up and goes eating grass with the others. Amazing.
Brilliant. So thanks very much to Andy and Victor for making that video. Andy on that trip was climbing with Simon Yates, who's joining us next. In a career spanning over 35 years, Simon's climbing and traveling has taken him from Alaska to New Zealand and from Greenland to the Antarctic. He's a veteran of over 70 mountaineering expeditions to high and remote mountains around the globe, where he's completed numerous first ascents. In addition to climbing for himself, Simon runs an expedition company called Mountain Dream. He's a popular public speaker, and he's written 3 autobiographical books. I'll hand straight over to Simon, who's joining us from Cumbria, and he can explain a little bit more about what Andy was talking about. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks very much, Nick. Right, I'll just get my screen up, and here we go. I think. Right, I'm just putting in a little map again, just to tell you, just to relocate you really with some of the places that I'm going to talk about, or the locations for some of the mountains I'm going to talk about. And I'm starting, so this is Tierra del Fuego and the business end of it, the Cordillera Darwin. All the trips that I've done down here have started in Ushuaia, in the Argentinian section of Tierra del Fuego. We then crossed the Beagle Channel to Puerto Williams on Isla Navarino. This has to be done because when you're in the Cordillera, the main part of the Cordillera to the west, you're exclusively in Chilean waters. So you need permission from the Chilean authorities to be at that end of the Beagle Channel. So the first trip, we're in Yendigaya Bay, that trip to Monte Ada with Andy. Subsequent trips, guided trips I've done, and one with Andy from a place called Cletolia, which is to the north of where the Beagle Channel forks. There's that Isla Gordon you can see there, the northwest and the southwest fork either side of it. And then I'm going to talk about a trip I did with Andy in 2007 to Senapia, which is that fork further west along the Beagle Channel there, and it's a fjord that's forked. It looks like a pitchfork actually on this map. So that's just to give you some bearings. So right, back to 2001, so 20 years ago now, and really our trip to Tierra del Fuego, the first trip, came about as a result of both Andy and I knowing this remarkable woman. Really, this is Celia Bull, who was a climber for many years. The partner of Paul Pritchard when he had his accident on the totem pole in Tasmania. It was Celia's efforts that saved his life, really. And Celia would climb for many years, was a very good climber. But after that time, she sort of shied away from climbing and started to get involved in sailing. And Celia doesn't do things by half, so she learned to sail an ocean-going yacht, and she got the tickets to do that. And then she bought this yacht, Ada, and with some friends from France, she sailed it from Brittany to the Falkland Islands and spent a southern summer down there. And then I met her. I hadn't seen her for a while, and basically, I blagged a lift on her yacht because I knew she told me she was going to go into the Beagle Channel and poke around the mountains there. So this is how this trip came about. At some other point, she'd actually been in Chamonix with Andy and seen him, and so she'd invited Andy on this, to come to this part of the world as well. So, basically by chance we ended up climbing together. Really, it was Celia who sort of set us up as climbing partners on this trip, and it proved to be, a very good, very successful climbing partnership. So not only am I grateful for the lift, obviously, but for also sort of pairing me up with Andy as a climbing partner. So anyway, back to Tierra del Fuego. As Julian has already said, you do get weather in this part of the world, so sailing is quite interesting, even though it's not in the open ocean. So you get a lot of wind and stuff like that, and it's difficult to sail really because the wind's so variable when you've got a lot of mountains and winds coming off the glaciers. So it's hard work sailing in here. But we got into the bay. This is the first bay at the eastern end of the Chilean Tierra del Fuego. This is the Estancia Yendigaya, where we met this gaucho, Jose Alvaro, and he helped us get to the mountains, as Andy said. First of all, we had to kind of find the valley we wanted to go up, and we really took a guess at that. We got these. This is the Estancia itself. We got these maps, all of which were very vague and inaccurate compared to that nothing compared to that map that Camilla Rada's now made that Nick mentioned earlier. I mean, that's a fantastic asset. But basically, we decided on that valley in the centre of the picture. There's a buttress lit up with a valley behind it, and we went off up this valley, and we got basically the horses could only get so far through the forest, and once Jose had enough, we got dropped off. He went back to the estancia with Celia, her sister Elaine, and my wife Jane. They all came along on the trip as well. And Andy and I were, we were left to get on with the mountain. So we got up onto the Beauvais Glacier, as it turned out, which was lucky. We were in the right valley. And here we could see the east face of Monte Beauvais and this sort of southeastern aspects of another mountain to the right of it, which Andy said we thought was probably the most southerly of the Roncagli peaks, Roncagli 3. And we decided that looked the kind of best bet for us to climb. So that's what we decided to do. Of course, being Tierra del Fuego, we then had to sit around in the forest in the rain for a while. And finally, the weather improved and we got on it. So yeah, the line, we went up the middle of that 900-meter face, heading for that little notch at the summit. And it was basically 2 days of climbing. Of course, we walked up to an advanced base camp on the glacier in lovely weather. And then when we started climbing, well, it was initially all right, but you can see what's happening. This is a storm coming in. Then we ended up climbing the first day through this filthy, horrible storm of wet snow and dry. Yeah, it was awful. Like the sort of worst day of climbing in Scotland imaginable, with the added discomfort of having to then make a snow hole in very, very shallow snow. So it was very tight. The snow was wet. We passed a miserable night in that, and we're soaking come the morning. Basically, it was still snowing, and we thought we were going to have to go down, but it brightened up, so we carried on. So this is the weather brightening up in Tierra del Fuego. Very, very Scottish, I have to say. Although this is a southern summer, rather than a Scottish winter, but very similar to Scottish winter conditions. But we were lucky. It got lovely, and as Andy said, we did a few pitches carrying our kit, but then decided we could sort of race to the summit if we left everything. So we left everything at this belay, and then got off the face and ended up the last sort of pitch or two. We're up this lovely sort of rimed up corner that led to the summit. And when we got on the top, we're in this mist, and there were sort of tantalising glimpses of mountains around us, and eventually it did clear, and it was just magical. The whole sort of sequence of events, really, finding the mountain, climbing the mountain, and then on this summit, this everything clearing around us. We got a Brockenspector. It's the first time I'd seen a Brockenspector. So Andy and I were on the summit of this thing, waving at our shadows of ourselves, projected onto this cloud to the east of us. It was an incredible moment, and we could see Monte Beauvais to the south of us, mountain first climbed by Eric Shipton back in 62 or 63. And then here we've got to the north of us, we've got 3 peaks, and it turns out these are the Roncagli peaks. So, on all the maps, all the information we'd got up to this point, there was Monte Beauvais and these 3 Roncagli peaks to the north of them a bit. And obviously, at this point, we realised Monte Ada was a separate mountain between them, and we subsequently named it Monte Ada after Celia's yacht. It was a beautiful evening. That's Monte Francis to the sort of southwest of us, and then about 7:30 in the evening, I guess we started this long series of abseils. The first one from a snow stake, back down the face we'd come up, and then across the glacier to our bivouac tent, and we arrived there, I think, about 2:30 the next morning. Very, very tired. Here I am getting at the tent. And then the following day, the weather was appalling. We woke up in this tent. It was raining. It was horrible. We're soaking again. And as Andy said, on this trip, we then, the girls, or my wife, Jane, and Celia's sister, Elaine, had arranged a trip back on another boat, back to Port Williams and then on to Ushuaia. So we were free to go on to sort of explore further westwards in the Beagle Channel, which is what we did. We went to this fantastic place. This is Cordillera, that little bay you can see down there, which is the starting point to go to Monte Francis, Monte Beauvais. You can also access Monte Italia from here. I'll just show you some pictures. I've guided people up Monte Francis 5 times, I think, and Beauvais once. So this is on top of Monte Francis here, with the Roncagli Peaks and Monte Ada just behind my knee there, and Monte Bove behind my rucksack. And this is on Monte Bove, the standard route up Monte Bove. This is this would be the 4th ascent of the mountain. Monte Francis has now been climbed about 10 times, I think, 5 times of which have been by me and people with me. And that'll be the most climbed mountain in the whole of the Cordillera Darwin range, without a shadow of a doubt. So this is the 4th ascent of Monte Bove. It follows that sort of ramp line up behind the rocky ridge there, to the shoulder on the left, and then back up to the summit. This is on the top of it, looking northwards. That's Monte Ada, the fantastic sort of black spiky peak on the right, and there the Roncagli peaks in the middle of the photo. Actually, on this one you can only see Roncagli 3 and 2. This is a client, an Australian client I took up with me, Jeff Robb. So that's Monte Francis to the left of me, and to the left of Jeff, I should say, and to the right of him, looking at the picture, is Monte Italia. In the distance. Now, the next trip I ended up doing on the yacht of this guy, who's a Belgian guy called Marcel Deletta, who's become sort of kind of pivotal in some things I've done since this time. But this was in 2007, and it looked like this trip was going incredibly badly wrong. Really, I chartered a yacht to take a group of clients. Initially, into the Cordillera Darwin and then round Cape Horn. That had worked out, and they had arranged for another boat to then take Andy and myself into the Cordillera Darwin, into Senna Pier, this fantastic fjord that you're looking at here. To climb some peaks in that. We didn't exactly know our objective, but this was just the rough plan we got at this stage. But when I got back from the trip with on this other boat, I got back to Ushuaia. I found out the evening before Andy was due to arrive from Europe, that this other yacht was broken. You know, the gearbox was gone on it, so he couldn't give us a lift. This guy, Andy Whittaker, and I was sent off to this man, Marcel Deletta. It was a Belgian guy with a yacht down there. He'd been living down on the yacht for a number of years, and so we went and met him, and he said he'd take us along with my wife and my two young children then, so 2.5-year-old and a 9-month-old child. So that was kind of interesting for Marcel, who's a kind of a lifelong bachelor, really, in many ways. So he got Andy and myself and all these children on his boat. But anyway, here we are going into Senna Pier, and what we ended up doing, we then were really tight. This trip, it looked like it was just one of those ones I was sort of thinking it's going to go totally wrong. We got so far along the Beagle Channel, and then we were stuck for about 10 days. The weather was appalling. We couldn't get any further west. And then eventually it sort of cleared a little bit, and we finally got into the fjord. But we'd only got 4 days at this point in order to do what we needed to do. One of which we spent sort of making a reconnaissance. We got dropped off on a beach down here at the head of Senna Pier. We get up, and I get the views of these 2 mountains at the head of the fjord. We kind of hoped to be able to do some more technical stuff up the valley up to the right, but we didn't have the time, and we couldn't access the base of the faces. There were big ice falls. It was just too complicated. So this was kind of plan B. And in the 3 days we got left, we managed to climb these 2 peaks, which we've named Monte Irana. They're named after Marcel's yacht, Monte Irana 1 and 2. But we got incredibly lucky because that evening we spent on the beach, and the next day was beautiful. We came up to this high camp, and the following day was beautiful. It was perfect. It was not difficult climbing, not particularly technical. In fact, the worst, I suppose the steepest bit of it was a weird a serac, really, that sort of slipped in the slope, I guess is the best way of describing it. So it wasn't teetering over. It was more at about, I don't know, maybe 50 degrees in the snow slope. And Andy led up it, and then I followed him. But as I was coming up it, when I planted an axe at one point, he actually cleaved the entire serac in half. It was a very, very weird occurrence. There was this huge crack and thud, and it split a few millimeters. And then I sort of shout. I sort of thought it might just sort of peel into 2 halves. Obviously, it couldn't really, because the angle of the slope wasn't steeping enough, and it must have been attached to something, you know, sitting on something. But it was a very weird thing. And then I was shouting up to Andy, did he know which side of the crack that I should climb up? You know, but he didn't. But anyway, I climbed up and it was all right. But when we came back down, the same way, and the split from being sort of 3 or 4 millimeters, when we got back down, it was about a centimetre. So these two huge blocks of ice weighing thousands and thousands of tons were moving apart. Anyway, we get up onto the first one. We did that, and then there was this other one behind it, so we climbed that one as well, and it was just an incredible day. That over there is Monte Darwin or Monte Shipton. There's some sort of contention over which is which, but obviously there are some interesting technical lines on that face. It's just difficult to approach them, but I do know a way of doing it, so maybe I have to go have a crack at one of those things at some point in the future. But yeah, we get to the top, and here we are. It's just fantastic. That's Saint Pierre, running southwards there to the northwest fork of the Beagle Channel. You can see Isla Gordon is the first island, and then the island behind it is Isla Host, which runs off down towards Cape Horn. So this was on top of this one, fantastic. Yeah, it was a great trip, even though they weren't technical mountains, but we sort of, we managed to do something against all these odds. And I remember standing on the summit with Andy and him saying, you know, it might not be the hardest mountain that I've ever climbed, but it's certainly one of the best. So I'm just going to finish now by running through a few slides that show you why I find this place is so special. I've been back here 10 times, and this is the pickup. But it's just an elemental landscape. That's what I love about this place. It's a landscape of mountains, of glaciers, of fjords, of dense southern beech forest, and of ocean, with a little bit of exotic wildlife thrown in as well. It really is an incredible part of the world, and I'm looking forward to getting back there at some point in the not too distant future. Here we are. There they are. That's the Cordillera Darwin heading back westwards towards Ushuaia, with on a rare day when you can see the whole Cordillera Darwin off to the west. And I'll finish now with this sunrise over the Beagle Channel. So thanks a lot, and I will hand you back now to Nick in London.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Simon. Brilliant. It looks absolutely magical down there, I must say. Okay, folks. So if you have a question now for one of the speakers, do switch on your video. Go with your mouse to the bottom of your screen and click on participants. And at the bottom of that screen, you should see the option to raise a hand. And if you're on YouTube or Zoom, you can type your questions into the chat. But just while we're waiting for those to come in, I'll kick off, I think. Really enjoyed those talks. Victor tells me that the waves, when you're sort of sailing in, can be as high as your house, basically. And apparently Andy Parkin has never been seasick. So I just wanted to ask you both how you get on a boat. Perhaps Julian, you'd like to start. So have you been unmuted?
Yes. Well, I'm glad I can see Skip there, because he knows that I get very, very seasick. I mean, not around Tierra del Fuego, because we sailed from Punta Arenas down the Magellan Straits, but we've been many times to South Georgia and the Antarctic Peninsula. And it's pretty hellish if you get seasick, because you're there, but in 3 to 4 days, if you're going to South Georgia, just as you're getting over it, you've arrived. And it's a bit the same coming back again. So, but I always think, however hellish it is if you get seasick or badly seasick, these places are so special and so incredible. Tierra del Fuego, South Georgia, the Antarctic Peninsula, the whole of the Southern Ocean region. It's worth getting sick for.
What about you, Simon?
Well, I patchy, I have to say. I went to one, Andy and I, in 2015, we went to the Antarctic Peninsula. Neither of us, I've not seen Andy sick, I must admit. Neither of us was sick. We went all the way there and all the way back. It was sort of quite big swell, quite big sea at sometimes, we didn't get caught in a storm or anything. But then I've had other times where, I've been a couple of times now to Greenland, the east coast of Greenland from northwestern Iceland. And I got very sick. I was sick for like a day and a half, or the whole, like you're saying, Julian, the whole journey there. I was all right on the way back, but both times going to Greenland, I got very sick. So patchy, but I'm kind of not. Some of the time, I've not been taking so many chances now. I just gobble those, the seasickness tablets and do it that way. I'd sooner be spaced out for 2 days rather than be throwing up for 2 days.
Nick, can I just say something? I can see that David Hillebrand is there, and we must mention, trips he did to Aguilera, which is not actually in Tierra del Fuego, but close by, just further north. They were some amazing trips. In fact, it's a peak that Skip and I, before he went there was one time we were intending to go there, but I can't remember why it was we didn't. But David did some amazing trips to Aguilera. And one other trip I might mention, which was in 2011, when the French army, the Groupe Militaire de Haute Montagne, did the first total west-east traverse of the entire Cordillera in 30 days, about 250 kilometers, with no previously laid caches. And, when I made that point about being dumped on by snow, I think that was the big thing for them, is you just had to keep moving, because if you did hit 5 days of storm, you can't just lie in the tent. And you just, anyway, they did an extraordinary, that was a pretty amazing trip, and actually is marked on Camillo Rada's map, the whole of their route.
Yes, I was going to say that, Julian, that's one of the amazing things about that map. And in fact, it also has David Hillebrand's route marked as well. David, I don't know if you're there, but you are unmuted in case you wanted to say hello.
I went down twice to Tierra del Fuego. I was introduced to it by Ian Peters, who'd been down several times. And one of the other maps he showed, the not very accurate one, and it's certainly not as accurate as Camillo's, was done by Don Sargent, who went down as well. Quite a crowd of Southwest climbers have a connection with this area. And Roncalli was an objective, and I managed to get up it. It was most likely one of the peaks I'm most proud of having climbed. But looking back on it, I certainly know what people mean about the avalanche risk. I don't know what made me cross one slope, but there was a summit very close. Sometimes you just do it and get away with it. Yeah, that was another good trip with 3 of us. Great area for small groups.
Fantastic, thanks, David. Good to see you.
Thanks.
So we're still waiting for some questions to come in. I think Julian told me that you had a question for Simon. Do you want to go ahead with that?
Well, that was about the sort of muddling up of what was Mount Shipton and what is Mount Darwin, and I don't know if you know any more of that.
I don't, to be quite honest, Julian. I don't know which way round they are either. I imagine that probably Camillo's maps probably, like, he will have probably done as good a research about that as anybody. So I think his map is probably like it's such a great resource, isn't it? Basically, because on that map, like you're saying, there's that west to east traverse that the French did relatively recently, and my mate in his yacht actually took, because they turned up in Yendigaya at the end of it, and he happened to be there at that point in time, so he took them to Porto Williams and to Ushuaia at the end of their trip. But there's a couple of traverses, aren't there? North-south traverses as well. And pretty much all the ascents of the mountains are on it as well. It's it's an incredible resource. Which is just really, it's kind of a labour of love, isn't it? As well, I don't suppose he's ever going to, get rich or even pay back the time he's put into doing it. So.
Nick, it'd be nice to hear from Skip, who's done a phenomenal amount of trips to Tierra del Fuego.
Yeah, go ahead, Skip. Good to see you.
Yeah, hi. Greetings from Cape Town, everybody.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that something that's pertinent to anybody who wants to go down there that we sort of, found after a lot of painful experimentation over the years, and this holds true for South Georgia as well, is that, the climbing season is really a lot better in late summer, early winter period, and not in the summer. The summer is actually the most windy time for the shortest windows of opportunity for climbing, we found. And that's certainly the case in Tierra del Fuego and certainly in South Georgia. And our South Georgia trips, which you've done, God knows how many now, Stephen Venables and I, we go in September, which is really sort of a late winter, very early spring. And it's because that in the wintertime, the depressions are moving north of these areas, whereas in the summer, they're south. So you get very heavy westerly winds added to the speed of the depression. So it's pretty relentless in terms of high winds and short windows. Whereas in the winter, when these systems are further north of your position where you're going to be, South Georgia or Tierra del Fuego, you get the easterly component. So it's subtractive from the speed of the low, and sometimes right under a trough of low pressure where you get very settled conditions. And that's something that, I've sailed down the Straits of Magellan many times, and in wintertime, you see Sarmiento clear as day, sometimes from Punta Arenas. In the summertime, you'll be lucky to see Sarmiento anytime from sea level. And that's just something to keep in mind. If you're going to go down there, you want to go down there April, at that time, in South Georgia, again, for us, it's, late August, early September into October. November is too late.
Yeah, I've done 2 trips down there like you're saying, in that September slot, Skip, to Tierra del Fuego, and they were not just the weather, but the conditions are actually better, really, because with a load of snow, and good snow in a lot of places, because by then, as you say, your early spring, you're getting some freeze, you're getting some thaw, so you're getting some neve, but also you've got the leaves are off the trees, and the bog is frozen at lower, so it's actually a lot easier to approach the mountains, because you're not having to wade with your Wellington boots on through all this bog and river crossings. The lakes are frozen, so you can just go across those as well. It makes it is actually easier, for sure.
Well, that's very true. And we tried Sarmiento in 2010, and it was exactly what you're saying, is we skied across the frozen bog, which otherwise would have been a hell of a struggle. That was, I think we were in July. It was super, dead of winter. And very true. Yeah, winter is the time to go down there, no doubt about it. Yeah, I think Camilo Rada, he's the same story. All of his big his successes down there on those big ascents where it was wintertime. Yeah.
There's a question coming in from Francoise. Good to see you, Francoise. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Francoise.
Yes. Hello. So, so Simon, I'm so sorry to have missed the trip, but apparently you had such bad weather. You spent your time drinking and smoking. So I think maybe it was a good thing I didn't manage to come. So I when I saw this, I see these beautiful photos, and oh gosh, I haven't been to the mountains for quite a while now. But what is the potential for skiing? Because being French, I'm lazy. I like to ski down. Don't like to walk down.
It's really good. I know people who skied there in the winter. It is good. Sometimes but again, some winters they do get a lot of snow down there, a lot of snow, and then others not so much. It's variable. But yeah, I've heard of people having some. I know people who skied there off Marcel's boat. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's a flog to get up to a point where you can ski down, but ski down through some really, sometimes really good powder, and so there is good skiing there.
Okay.
But it's I guess it's dangerous though, isn't it? Because you at points because you're going to be skiing down through this forest and there could be a tree underneath some of the snow or whatever. You know, it's that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, you know, some of us are more at ease on skis than on boots or crampons, so it depends of your skills.
Yeah. No, I prefer the boots and crampons myself. So.
Thank you, Francis. I think we've got some questions coming in from YouTube. So, Nigel, do you want to go ahead with those? I just need to unmute you. There you go.
I'm unmuted. We have one from Adeline Drabble. She says, thanks to all the speakers. She'd be interested to hear where you find the resources for planning these expeditions and to what extent you involve local knowledge or guides. I could go to both speakers, I think.
You have a go, Julian. You have a go first.
I've never had a guide. I don't know about guides down there. Look, it's obviously Tierra del Fuego is. I mean, you've got to know somebody with a boat or find yourself a boat. So it's probably fairly expensive in that regard because for that reason. But other than that, I don't think you need a lot of financial resources any more than you do in any other region of the world. If you do it yourself and you don't go through any agents or use any guides, that's the cheap way to do it. Well, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I know people in Ushuaia. There is a guiding company in Ushuaia. I know the people who do it, who run it. You know, but all the trips that I've done, like you say, Julian, basically it's down to, you know, they don't have any more knowledge really of these places than anybody, particularly actually in the Cordillera, than anybody else really, you know, because so few people have done anything there. So nearly all the time, particularly if you're going to do something new, the biggest sort of problem is building up a three-dimensional picture of how to actually get to the mountain a lot of the time, to get through the forest, the lakes, the large rivers that can be in there, and glaciers and big ice falls on some, you know, they're fast moving glaciers. So that can be that's the real problem. And really you can only do that by going and seeing and trying to figure it out really. Yeah, and like you say, Julian, I mean, yachts are expensive, but mountaineering expeditions are expensive wherever you go. So the great thing about a yacht is once you're on the yacht, you don't pay for a hotel or anything like that, do you? Because the yacht is your hotel. You're completely self-contained and you don't spend any money on the time you're in the yacht section of the journey, you know, of the trip. You're only spending money in the town at the beginning, in Ushuaia at the beginning and the end of the trip, really. So they don't end up any more, you know, much more expensive, I'd say. So
I agree.
And the great thing is you can stop smoking on a trip like that. So I'm just going to tell you this, Francois. As the children grew up, they started getting all this sort of stuff at school, telling me, you know, that basically I was going to die, you know, instantly. So because I smoked, so I decided to stop smoking, and I went on it was on a trip down there in about 2010, and I knew that I'd run out of tobacco about halfway through the trip, and so one day I rolled my last cigarette with the last tobacco I got. I smoked it, and I've not smoked another cigarette since because it was 2 weeks before I could potentially even buy one anyway. So.
Thanks, Simon. So we've got two more questions. One from Peter Payne. He wanted to ask whether there's much sign of the retreat of the glaciers and global warming. That's one question. And then the other one was from Leo Dickinson, actually. He wonders, what's the highest altitude of the mountains and that you've climbed down there? And can you know, how far north can you see? Can you see to the Payne, Torre del Paine, presumably he means, or is that too far? So 2 questions. Simon?
You can't see Piney. You know, you can't see. You can only see the kind of the Cordillera. The highest one, I think Beauvais 2,400 and Shipton and Darwin, they're all around that 2,400, 2,500 meters, the highest ones. So,
Okay.
As regards, I'm no great expert on this, but regards to Glacial Retreat, I think I'm right in saying that perhaps the least great glacial retreat is in the Darwin and the Pacific Patagonian coast there, because there is tremendously high precipitation. But I'm sure there is glacial retreat like everywhere else, but I think it's slower than a lot of places because just the amount of snow that drops. But Skip might know more, or Simon, I don't know, but that seems to be the way.
Skip.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of glacial scientists down there now looking at it, because apparently I think it is retreating quickly. It's because it's not like you say, there's a lot of precipitation, but it can, if the temperature alters a little, it'll fall as rain rather than as snow. You know what I mean? So yeah, I believe, and I have seen the glacier underneath the south face of Monte Francis, which is a thin glacier anyway. It's over slabs of granite, and I've noticed in the time I've been going down there that it's gone back, like several hundred meters up these granite slabs, basically. So I think it is, but there are a lot of climate scientists down there, and in South Georgia, I think they're expecting it to alter South Georgia quite quickly as well.
We've seen there's a lot more. Skip will tell you about the Glacial Recession there. Skip.
Yes, I mean, with Tierra del Fuego, Simon's right. I remember that, that whole face of Mount Francais there that was ice bound, and there was actually when I actually climbed the second ascent of Mount Francais after Shipton in '93, and we didn't go up that ice face. We went up the rock arête up to the right, but that was a route up that ice face, and now that's gone completely. I mean, so that the Mount Francais, the glacier below the summit, is a vestigial glacier now. There's not much left of it, and South Georgia for sure has seen some of the most massive glacial recessions on the north coast, especially. Like I remember when Craig Jones and I and Al Hughes camped in the Neumayer Glacier when Craig climbed the Three Brothers in 2002, and now that's all ocean, and that thing has retreated about 6-7 kilometers in the last 15-20 years. I mean, it is massive. It's retreated right up to the level of the Cole Plateau. If you know the geography there, it's incredible. And but on the north side of South Georgia, which is this is this thing about snow loading, some of the glaciers on the south side of South Georgia, they actually are advancing.
Right.
The Novosililsky Glacier is actually sort of advancing down because of weather coming in from the west, dumping snow and loading that glacier. So that's sort of an anomaly about glacial recession. There are some that are advancing because of the heavy snowfall, and that's obviously the same connected to climate change.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, that's music to our ears, I'm sure, to know of at least one glacier that's. So there's a question from Sebastian Wolfram I'd like to ask. He's our newest member, actually. He's just been accepted as a member of the Alpine Club, so welcome, Sebastian. Sebastian asks, what's the rough percentage of unclimbed peaks in the area? Simon?
Oh, I've not added them all up, but it depends how big an area you want to take in, doesn't it? Like if you can include that whole archipelago, Isla Gordon, Isla Host, they've got a lot of mountains on them as well. There's hundreds of mountains there probably, and I don't know, maybe 20 of them have been climbed. So there's still a big percentage of mountains waiting to be climbed in that group of peaks for sure.
And do you have plans to have you got specific plans to attempt anything new?
I've still got a list. I've got a list of things I'd like to go and do there. But for a few years, it was difficult to get. It's resolved itself now. But the Chileans stopped non-Chilean flagged yachts basically going into their water in the channel for a number of years, and that they put a kibosh on getting in and out of there, but they've changed that back to how it was before again now. So I'm hoping to get in there maybe next year. So yeah, for sure.
There's a comment from David. He mentioned that people have tried carrying skis through the dense forest. It's a massive effort, but yeah, he said he'd not been there since the 90s. Snowshoes, maybe? Do you think, would you take snowshoes, Simon?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you'd probably end up getting them caught on the, but yeah, but as I say, I have heard some people who they skied off Marcel's yacht and they walked up and skied. They had some good skiing, but I've no idea how difficult it was flogging up in the first place. They didn't mention it to me.
Good stuff. Well, I think we're at the end of the questions. I can't see any more coming in, unless anyone wants to pit me and sort of butt in and raise a hand.
Rick, can you hear me?
Oh, that's Leo. Hello, Leo. Yes, go ahead, Leo. Good to see you.
I've got a film from taken in 1960 by Professor Marcelo Costa, who is head of a department in Adelaide, Australia, university in Australia. And he crossed the ice cap, the Gila Continental, back in 1960, and he made a 16mm film, which I've got. And he then went back about 40 years later, and the Glacial Retreat from where Shipton and he went before Shipton, actually. Slight bone of contention there, by the way. He gave Shipton the map to do it. As a 19-year-old student, and the difference in the glaciers is just phenomenal. I mean, we're talking about 5 or 10 miles of glacier that's gone, and that's Lago San Martin in the north. I know it's further north than we're talking about now. And the reason I asked the question about how high the mountains are, when we climbed Cerro La Toro in 1971. We thought, and in our commentary in my film, it says we can see Tierra del Fuego. Maybe we were wrong, Simon.
Yeah, I don't think you did, but
I mean,
it might have been a very clear day, mightn't it?
We were at 13,000 feet, 50 feet higher than Fitzroy, and we thought we could, but it could have just have been snowy mountains to the south.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the mountains go all the way down there, don't they?
Yeah.
There's mountains on the mainland. There are all those islands off to the west of the mainland. Well, they run up right the way up, to Chilo Island, right the way up. There's 1,000 kilometers of them, maybe 1,500 kilometers of them of mountainous, uninhabited islands. The whole, that's kind of it's one of the emptiest bits kind of remaining of the planet, really, that bit of Chile, basically.
There's another volcano for you to climb, Simon, just slightly north of Cerro La Toro. It had smoke coming out of it when we were...
Yes, there's a few of those, aren't there, in the along the Andean chain.
Indeed, yeah.
Well, Leo, it'd be great to see that film. I don't know if we can somehow put it into the Alpine Club library or something, and
I will ask the professor. He's 89 years of age now, and he normally responds to his emails within about 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say 20 years, but...
No, slightly intriguingly, he crossed the ice cap. Let me just get this right. 8 days after Cesare Maestri claimed to have climbed Cerro Torre. So there you go. Another film.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I don't know if Simon or Julian, you want to, you've got anything to sort of finish off with, but do butt in if you have. Actually, there's one more question coming in. Paul Newby. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Nick. I've got a map of Tierra del Fuego and the south of Patagonia right here on the table, and I've just measured the distance from the Piney to the Cordillera Darwin, and it's about 500 kilometers, so I think it's probably too far. I have seen Mont Blanc from high peaks in the Auvergne in central France, but I don't think that's that far. So perhaps it really is just a little bit too far to reckon to see, unless there's some very, very remarkable refraction around the surface of the Earth there.
Very good.
Somebody may correct me if I'm wrong. I've done this very quickly, but I think that's what I found, 500 kilometers.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul. Brilliant. Okay, well, I'll sum up. I'll start to tell you about next week. So first of all, I just want to say thank you very much to Andy, Parkin, of course, and Victor, Julian, and Simon. And to tell you that after our closing slide tonight, we're going to hear news about Malcolm Bass from Simon Yeasley, who's joining us. Our next Alpine Clubcast, number 23, in a week's time, is entitled Peaks and Pandemics. Andrew Pollard and Charlie Clark, both experienced Alpine climbers and expedition doctors, were students together at Barts in the 1980s. Charlie will introduce Andy, whom I heard only a few days ago on the Today programme talking about vaccines. He will talk about how he helped to develop the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and what our chances are of returning to the mountains this summer. Do have a look at the Alpine Club Library YouTube page, which you can subscribe to, and there you can watch, like and share all the previous Alpine Clubcasts. And if everyone could unmute yourselves now. Thanks all for joining us. Keep safe, and please put your hands together so we can applaud tonight's speakers.
Simon.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, he does. Yeah.
So thank you. That's a slide for the next one. So we're going to re-mute everyone now. And yeah, Malcolm Bass, recent vice president.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've pondered that sort of thing. Well, Dave's been in negotiations with them.
Okay, I'll start that again, sorry. Malcolm Bass, recent vice president of the Alpine Club and chairman of the Montaigne Alpine Club Climbing Fund, suffered a major stroke last summer. In the chat now, you can see a link, which Nigel, I think, is going to put in, to a video about the fundraising campaign for Malcolm. Simon Yeasley has been Malcolm's climbing partner for over 30 years, and he's joining us now from Highland, Perthshire, to tell us more about how Malcolm is. Do stick around for a chat after Simon has spoken. Are you there, Simon? We're just getting Simon unmuted.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nick. That's me unmuted. Excellent. Hopefully you can hear me. Julian, Simon, and Andy, thank you. Thank you for letting me ghost in on the back of what was an absolutely superb presentation. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you as well to the Alpine Club committee and to Victor for just this opportunity to spend a couple of minutes updating members about Malcolm Bass. Last week, Victor sent out a member email, and hopefully that reached us all, and hopefully we all had the opportunity to read that. In summary, Malcolm, 6 months ago now, but at the horribly young age of 55, suffered a catastrophic stroke. Victor also mentioned in that email that Malcolm's closest friends had launched a GoFundMe campaign to try and raise funds to support Malcolm's recovery. Victor also reinforced the point that Malcolm's one of us. You know, He's been a staunch supporter of the Alpine Club. He and I joined the Alpine Club together 20 years ago, and Malcolm's been more active than I have in the shenanigans of the club. He's been vice president, as Nick said. He's been he's headed up the AC Climbing Fund subcommittee since 2013, I think. And you know, Malcolm has got a very, very impressive Alpine and Himalayan and Scottish winter CV. Over 20 trips to greater ranges, hundreds of new climbs, often at very high standard in Scotland in winter. Trips out to Alaska, trips out to Canada, and I've had the pleasure of accompanying Malcolm on those and being his stalwart partner over the last 35 years. I wanted to do two things over the next couple of minutes. One, just to update the AC community on how Malcolm currently is, and just to talk a little bit about how as individual AC members, as individuals, we can, if we want to, support the GoFundMe campaign. 6 months ago, Malcolm was staying with myself and my wife. Woke up one morning and Malcolm is lying on the floor having suffered a ridiculously catastrophic stroke. 55 years old, quite frankly, shouldn't happen to people at that age. Probably one of the fittest athletes, mountain athletes that I've ever known. And this stroke came completely and utterly out of the blue. It very nearly killed Malcolm. He had a craniotomy, so basically they removed the size of side of his skull to the size of about the palm of his hand. He's still missing that section of his skull. He spent 4 months in hospital. Has spent the large part of the last 6 months with no use of his left side whatsoever. And for somebody used to running up and down mountains all around the world, that's pretty traumatic when you got no use of your left side. Left vision all completely messed up as well. I've lost the bottom left quadrant of vision in both his eyes. From a kind of a mental perspective, Malcolm is still the idiot that he always has been, and fortunately, the stroke has affected primarily his motor ability rather than his cognitive ability. He does have a little bit of brain damage and struggles with concept of time, but that he is, you know, he is really mastering some of those. The good news is that over really the last couple of weeks, Malcolm's been receiving very specialist care, very expensive specialist care for the last, well, since the actual stroke. And over the last few weeks, we're really seeing signs of improvement. Goodness knows what the prognosis is now. It's impossible to tell. But what we know we're seeing now is he's getting some independent movement back in his left leg. He's able to take 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 steps at a time. He's working on an adapted cycle machine that he and his wife Donna are using. He's beginning to get a tiny little bit of muscle twitch and muscle movement back into his left arm as well. He's still severely disabled though, and the journey is long, and the journey is a very expensive one. The support that the NHS can give is wonderful, but quite frankly, the NHS have got a lot of other things on their mind at the moment. And also, of course, you know, the stroke rehab for males in the UK is primarily aimed at people who are much older and are not mountain athletes. So we're having to look and get specialist care from a whole variety of places. That leads me on to the second part of it, about how AC members and how the AC community can hopefully gather around Malcolm and support him. On behalf of Malcolm and his partner Donna, thank you very much to people who have already, AC members and people interested in the AC, who have already supported and donated funds into this GoFundMe campaign. We've actually raised over £35,000. The target is a big one of over £100,000. But it's been wonderful to see, and I've been clocking and seeing lots of known AC faces making donations. So thank you on their behalf for those of us who have made donations. If you want to make a donation individually yourself, please, I know Malcolm and Donna would be hugely supportive and hugely thankful of that. And Nick has posted on there's a link to the GoFundMe page, and there is a video on there as well. It's a little bit out of date. It's probably a couple of months out of date because the progress is starting to make. The other thing, and partly the other thing for talking about it now, is as we move into the spring and we move into and away from the things that are keeping us indoors, move away from this pandemic, and we can get out more. We're seeing a lot of people starting to come up with specific fundraising ideas for things they might want to do themselves to raise funds for this AC member. So, for example, my son, 20-year-old, pretty fit lad, has worked out if he runs up Burnham Hill, which is just behind Dunkeld, 42 times, he gets the height of 6,805 meters, which is the height of Janacott, which is the last significant mountain that Malcolm made the first ascent of. He and I have done over 200 new routes in Scotland in winter. If you want to try and play around with that and do 200, to do something over 200 times, whatever the exact number is, whatever it is, it's just to put it out there to say, with the AC committee and Victor's support, if we can find ways of looking after one of our own, then please get your thinking caps on. And if you can come up with creative ways or, creative things you'd like to do, either, ideally get in touch with me if there are specific things you'd like to do, and we can try and link them and kind of fold them into the overall fundraising campaign. But just as I say, Malcolm Bass, one of us, let's see how we can support him as AC members. Nick, back to you.
Thank you, Simon. And I know there are a lot of people in tonight who are, who know Malcolm well, and from all around the world actually. So good to have that update. Thank you. So yeah, that's the end of the evening, as it were. But do stick around. Now Michael's going to switch the YouTube off. So goodbye to everyone on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. And anyone in Zoom, if you want to unmute yourselves and throw abuse, tell us that, complain about echoes or technical glitches, then please do, because as I say, we've got 3 more of these to do, and I can tell you